All right. So first, as a brief introduction, I'm Sofia Zander with both Trail People and Zander Design, and we've been the main consultant on the Delta Trail Master Plan process, which is just getting to the point where we're about to release the public draft at the next commission meeting in November. So if you're interested in hearing more about the master plan, you can reach out to Virginia and we'll get you on the list if you're not already. I'm presenting today with Patrick Johnston. I'm going to let him go ahead and introduce himself and he'll kick us off. And then we'll be passing the baton around.
Thanks, Sophia. Hey, everyone. Like Sophia mentioned, my name is Patrick Johnston, and I am with the Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program, which is a program in the National Park Service. And we've been working with Sophia and Virginia and DPC folks and others on the Great California Delta Trail Master Plan process, which kicked off in earnest a few years back, just before the pandemic, and then kind of got derailed for a little bit, but we're back going strong. And wanted to share just a little bit of background context with you in this discussion around heritage adventures, because through the planning process with the Delta Trail Master Plan, we've kind of come across or come upon and evolved this concept of the Adventure Hub, which really was part of an exploration of what the Delta Trail is and how it might be implemented in different locations, different contexts and settings across the Delta. Next slide. Awesome. And so I think, most of you are pretty familiar, pretty aware that the Delta Trail Master Plan area largely overlaps with the National Heritage Area. And so there's been a real deliberate effort to work in collaboration and find opportunities where the Delta Trail Master Plan process could lay a complementary foundation and framework for some of the heritage area planning, especially given the fact that the master plan process was moving ahead a little in advance of the earnest heritage planning efforts that Blake and others are involved in now. Next slide. And so through the input of the public, through stakeholders, many of you here, technical advisors, 4 trail types evolved during the master plan process in support of the trail's overall vision to connect the San Francisco Bay and Sacramento trail networks, trail systems. The first is the main trail, which really is kind of the core or the spine, primary corridor that would be acknowledged as the primary Delta Trail. These would have probably the broadest range of user types, provide the best Delta experience, provide connections to legacy communities, public transportation, and other Delta destinations. The next typology was local access trails, and they meet a lot of the same criteria as the main trail segments, but the prioritization with local access trails would be connecting to the main stem versus necessarily connecting through the Delta. There was also water launch sites, another typology that was identified, and again, this could be water launch sites along the main stem, along local access trails, standalone water access sites, providing a lot of the similar experiences, similar vision for what the Delta Trail is, but really be focused on obviously water use. And then in addition to those 3, adventure hubs emerged as a 4th typology. And within the master plan, next slide. Within the master plan, adventures are really being defined as a real broad variety of opportunities that could include historical walking tours, kayak, boat launch sites and rentals, bike loops, equestrian loops, bird watching walks, and more. The adventures are seen as something that could serve as a destination within the Delta, can anchor a visitor's experience and encourage further exploration. And so think of it maybe as a launching point where there's perhaps a collection of adventures from one spot. These hubs potentially giving direction and purpose for visiting the Delta and making it easy for visitors to decide what to do and where to go when they're in the Delta. And the master plan itself, as Sofia is going to touch on in a little bit, does identify and highlight some adventure hub ideas as potential good opportunities. But the master plan is not prescribing anything at this point. It's again looking to provide a framework from which heritage area planning and local jurisdictions can make decisions on what best to include in a concept like this. So I'm going to turn it over to Sofia, who's going to go through some of the maps.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Patrick. So just to reiterate what Patrick was saying, the whole concept behind the Delta Trail is not a commission developed trail. The commission is really facilitating and supporting and coordinating the development of the trail. And that applies to everything from the land trail, the water trails, and the adventure hub concepts. It's all a locally driven set of plans. So what we have done in the master plan is we broke the Delta Trail planning area up into 4 regions: the Western region, Northern, Central, and Southern. And within those, we were giving, in relation to the adventure hubs, we gave a couple examples of what the adventure hubs might be, with the explicit direction that the adventure hub should be developed by local groups or agencies and in partnership with the National Heritage Area Planning process. So as just again, to underline what Patrick said, these are not like direct, like this is what happens, these are just ideas. So to get the juices flowing, as it were. So in the Western region, we're looking at right now, were some recommendations for a Carquinez Strait Adventure Hub. So this could include things like a historic walking tour of downtown, or a transit to trail Carquinez Strait Scenic Loop Trail bike adventure, where you took Amtrak to Martinez and rode the loop. Another adventure hub area was the Suisun City Adventure Hub area, where again, there's Amtrak connections available, and there's tons of kayaking opportunities. There's also in the works other Suisun Marsh. There's also, there's the Rush Ranch. There's all sorts of great opportunities in the Suisun Marsh area. And there's also some more, we've been hearing about, we're learning about more of the nature watching opportunities that are getting developed in that area. So the third one that we include in the Western region is the Oakley Brentwood Adventure Hub. And this could include things like biking to You Pick Cherries, or doing a big break kayak and environmental education adventure. Or there's also the historic downtowns. There's all sorts of great, all of these communities have great things, but these were areas where we just started to pick out some of the ideas. In the Northern region, we were looking at 2 different adventure hub areas, one in the Sacramento, West Sacramento area. Again, you've got your Amtrak trail bicycle adventure opportunities. You've got waterway adventure opportunities. And then down in Clarksburg, the Clarksburg Adventure Hub, several people in the process have written to tell us about the great wine tasting and all these great ideas for wine tasting tours in the Clarksburg area. So we're excited about that. The Central region, we're looking at a Lock, Walnut Grove, Isleton Adventure Hub with all the amazing historic resources in all 3 of those communities. You could do a historic walking tour of any one or combination of them. Rio Vista has a lot of great opportunities coming out of it. There's, biking, a bike loop around the island just north of there. You've got the Delta Loop driving loop. There's Sandy Beach, and some great resources within the town. And then you've got Brandon Island Adventure Hub with the Brandon Island State Recreation Area, and then also using that as a launching point for accessing the Franks Tract State Recreation Area, and the Sherman Island Adventure Hub with kiteboarding and all of the wind sports that come out that people do at Sherman Island, as well as the camping opportunities and picnicking opportunities there. In the southern region, we were hitting on a Stockton Adventure Hub with, there's a lot of really great water access sites in the southern region. And so this is where you really could even get into point-to-point water access to like Morelli Park to Buckley Cove or something along those lines. And then in Lathrop, you could again do a bicycle or walking adventure, particularly possibly in the new development area on the western edge of town, but also then there's other areas with it in town that are options there. So we don't. So those are just ideas to get everything started. One of the big things that we're going to start in the Delta Trail Master Plan, but won't be finished and will have to be part of the, which should really be part of the National Heritage Area, is really thinking about what will it mean to designate an area as an adventure hub. So for the land trail and the water trails, we have very well worked out designation criteria. So really helping give guidance both to commission staff, but also to local organizations that are interested in having a land trail or water launch site designated. The criteria really helps everyone understand what is involved. And then it means that the trail user experience is a little bit more consistent. Users will know a little bit more what they can expect when they get on the trail. Something similar should be developed for the adventure hubs. So a consistent set of criteria. So a local organization really knows what they need to be doing to get their cool things designated as an adventure hub. Some of the criteria that we are throwing out there are, are there localized trails and routes already available? Is there a unified theme or activity for the whole hub? The trail or that hub does not necessarily need to advance the connectivity of the main Delta Trail or the connector trails, but the hub should be serving to primarily spur activity within the Delta. And then really focusing wherever possible in areas where there's already public access and public facilities existing. So that's all from our end of the presentation. Blake, who are we sending this to next? And we can take questions also.
Yeah, why don't we see if there's any questions first? I know that Linda has something in the chat. Linda's
okay.
still here.
I have not seen that. Let's see. Well, the adventure hubs also have interpretive facilities and wayfinding. That's a really great question and something that we haven't addressed, but at the very least, there needs to be a map or whether it's an itinerary or a list of locations or some sort of information about it. But then I love the idea of getting, whether it's using the Delta Trail logo or some other adventure hub logo that really sort of identifies a location as part of the hub. And then depending on what the hub is, wayfinding could be totally included. Interpretive facilities would be fantastic. Yeah, and Virginia already answered that. I see that now. Samuel asks, what is the definition or criteria of uses in one location that enable a particular location to be designated as an adventure hub? So that, yes, that is the question. So we're throwing out some ideas, but this is the designation criteria will have to be developed as part of the National Heritage Area process. And then can these uses all be included in one location? Recreation grounds with whitewater rafting, canoeing, kayaking, rappelling, rock climbing, and more. I think you'd be hard pressed to find whitewater rafting in the Delta, but I think it, yeah, I think the more, I think this, I don't know, Patrick, you look like you want to jump in and add something
Well, I was just gonna say that, you know, a lot of the things that we were investigating exist, and it's in some ways this is about kind of you know, the Delta is a big place and there's a lot of things to do and places to explore. And I think for outsiders in particular, first-time visitors, it's that question of where do I go, what do I do, what do I see? And if there's ways to organize activity either through geographic clusters of opportunities where there's different potential opportunities for folks to get out and explore the Delta in different ways, or if there's a series of activities that are thematically unified, you know, it's the wine tours or whatever, that I think that it's kind of a way to help focus and market and advertise what the Delta has for that first time visitor and those folks outside who are coming in. And yeah, it's something that we're still kind of, you know, working on, and that's part of, I think, some of the discussion today in this session.
I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing so that we can all see each other for a second.
Yeah, this is Virginia Gardner. I just want to quickly mention, I know Matt Holmes has got his hand up, but I think the biggest thing for us, the commission's perspective, is we want the communities to really be sort of driving. We certainly need to have a consistent and sort of cohesive definition that we're operating under, but we really feel as though the actual ingredients at Adventure Hubs are probably really going to be organically developed by the communities that they're in. So, you know, without, you know, scooping what the NHA decision will end up being, I know that that's going to be pretty important for us.
Matt, go ahead, and then I will answer the two questions that are still in the chat. Go ahead, Matt.
Well, the two questions kind of scooped, you know, ideas that occurred to me. I mean, one is obviously somebody's done some rec analysis of the Delta region, and that might be a good place to start. And then Virginia, you totally called out what I was hoping to see is sort of a plan for community design of this. And I really just wanted to share this really cool mapping tool that I've been using for lots of bad news in Richmond, where we map pollution sources and vulnerable populations, but it's called My Social Pinpoint, and it's got a really easy to use mapping interface. You may have already seen it, but it seems like something that each region with a working group could use to identify things that really value to those locals. And Linda, yeah, it's got to have a water trail, doggone it. I don't know if there's a plan for that yet, but that needs to happen. Thank you.
Matt,
Go ahead, Sophia.
those are great comments. First on the water trail, yes, absolutely. The Delta Trail, as Patrick mentioned in the beginning, we've got the 4 designations. There's main trail, connector trails, or local access trails, water launch sites. So we're not calling it exactly a water trail. We're calling them water launch sites because it's less about like point to point, although you could certainly string together points. So that's the 3rd one. And then the Adventure Hub is the 4th Delta Trail designation. So 100% the hubs can include any of the other Delta Trail parts, but they don't have to, right? So they could have water launch sites, they could have trail components, or they could be, and they could be enhancing those, or they could be its own just hub of great activities and opportunities. And then the other thing I want to touch on is absolutely, we really enjoyed and relied a lot on the 2011 state parks recommendations and dug into a lot of those. And this absolutely grew out of that and is one of those great ideas. And then Social Pinpoint, I love it. It's a good reminder about that resource. And those are great ways to get community. You know, I could totally see a whole process of using something like that. Somebody needs to mute. Paulette, do you mind muting?
Paulette.
Okay. Anyhow, yes, using something like Social Pinpoint to get a whole community, you know, to really rally around a hub idea. Robert is asking, to what extent will history, natural, and human drive the designation of paths? I read that with two different parts of the question. I think that, are you asking about the land trails or the hubs? And I think in both cases, history drives a lot of both of those, in large part because that's where a lot of the resources are that we want to be that people are interested in seeing and experiencing. I hope that answers that question.
And actually, Sofia, I think that might lead into my discussion a little bit in terms of the adventures.
Totally. Do we want to answer this? What is this last question? Could the trail include a major hub? Go ahead. Yeah, a major hub, including the Costumas River Preserve, that goes so well with the Eisenberg Crane Reserve and Staten Island. Absolutely. Those are, I mean, that's the kind of thing we're thinking about, is like, how do you sort of help people get their arms around what are these great opportunities for dipping a toe into the Delta and getting to know the Delta better. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna mute and let Blake take over.
Thank you, Sofia. So one of the things that I wanted to just talk a little bit about was this idea of adventures. I know that one of the things that a lot of National Heritage areas do, and one of the things that we've been sort of eager to do, was to really provide guidance for visitors and for residents as far as where you might want to visit and what you might want to check out while you're in the area. And that can kind of relate to several different things, whether it's just a getting to know the area sort of thing, or it might be something that's more related to a specific topic. So one of the things that we have been starting to develop is this idea of adventures. And I guess you could easily just call them biking, driving and walking tours, but I think we wanted to give it a little bit more sense of wonder about it. And really, I think what we wanted to do is to be able to have different levels of adventures for people within the area. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of sense of what we've developed so far in terms of some of the work that we've been doing. And then what we'll be doing after this is sort of breaking into different groups to talk a little bit more about some of the overview adventures. So as you can see on the handout that I sent out earlier, one of the things that we were looking at doing first was sort of these overview driving adventures with a focus on people who may not be, really knowledgeable about the area and really would like to know a little bit more about it. And so, it became very difficult really quickly when we sort of explored this, that it would be very difficult to look at the entire National Heritage Area and Delta in one day. You really needed to break it up. And so that's the reason why we were looking at 4 different potential adventures. And that is what we'll be talking a little bit more about when we do the breakout groups. That first one is North Delta, kind of related to the communities along the Sacramento River. And then the South and East Delta, San Joaquin County, the West Delta, Eastern Contra Costa County, and the Carquinez Strait. And so that is what we were thinking of as sort of our initial step, was to develop these overview drive-in adventures as a kind of a first, something that we can show to people. We can put on our website. We can develop actual maps of them. That's the idea that we had, was to sort of develop these a little bit further. And so one of the things that we wanted to do is to get your guidance a little, about what places you think we should visit. And particularly, we recognize that, just because of just brevity, we have to kind of focus on the most, what we think are probably the most critical stops. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we're hitting as many things as possible. There's also going to be issues sometimes with seasonality. There's going to be some places that are going to be Like Staten Island tends to be more of a fall and winter activity as opposed to summer, but definitely there's a potential to visit that any time of year. So those are some of the things that we wanted to talk about when we do it and go into the breakout groups. The other thing that has kind of come up is the popular topical adventures. And these are things that have been coming up several times as sort of ways that people can explore the Delta is through different topics and different themes. And so agricultural adventures obviously are key. Unfortunately, the Sacramento River Delta Grown group had to disband earlier, but that could potentially be something that might be pursued further within the framework of the NHA or elsewhere. Asian and Pacific Islander heritage, there's obviously a really deep heritage within the region. And so, you know, you could easily make a tour that just stops at heritage sites that are related to Filipino and Chinese and Japanese and Sikh history within the area. Family fun. Obviously, this is more aimed at kids and families. But you know, it's obviously, you know, a really good way to provide something that will be kind of an in for a lot of people. You might be people in some of the surrounding metropolitan areas that really need sort of that more guided trip to know exactly what to visit. Indigenous, and this is really you know, something that we would work with the tribes. Natural resources, obviously there's an array of different places that people could visit, and then recreation. So these are different topical themes that we might do. Obviously, that would be, we're probably looking a little bit later to develop those. Then bicycling and walking adventures. There are some places that have already developed walking tours. So obviously one of the things we would want to do is sort of be able to utilize those existing walking tours, but there might be areas that need walking tours or bicycling tours that don't have them yet. And then finally, sort of the niche topical adventures. And this really relates to topics that might have a little bit more of a specific audience, but I think would be also really valuable. I know that around Halloween, ghost tours are very popular, and so that could be something that we might want to develop. Prohibition has been something that I've been interested in for a while, just related to sort of the colorful prohibition history of the area. There's a sports tour that we could do during times of the year when people might want to visit different, you know, baseball. You know, they might want to go to baseball games or basketball games. So those are things that we might want to focus at different times of the year. So these are all topics that we've been developing. But one of the things that I wanted to do was just to get some further thoughts about other possible things that we can do. Obviously, we want to keep things limited. There's probably a wide array of things that we can do, but you know, we also want to focus on the things that would probably have the most bang for the buck. So if you are interested in sort of helping us with this, we really appreciate it. So feel free to reach out to me, and or if you have any specific questions about anything, just let me know. But I think really what we see this as is an opportunity for people to get to know the area and have ways that they can get to know the area. Yes, Trevor did mention the possibility of having a water-based adventure, and that's a very good idea. Thank you for mentioning that to me, because there are a lot of things that people can visit, you know, by different types of boats. You know, either a kayak or a canoe or actual motorized boating. That's a good idea. Thank you. Any other thoughts? Unfortunately, I can't see if somebody has their hand raised. I can't see it very easily.
We'll keep an eye out for it, like.
Okay. If not, then one of the things that we can do right now is talk a little bit more about overview drive-in adventures. And so, as I mentioned before, what we were looking at was sort of separating the area into 4 different subregions. And so what we're going to do is do a breakout into different into the 4 different groups to correspond to the 4 different regions. Yes, thank you, Jan, for the winery tours as well.
And Linda has her hand raised.
Yeah, Linda, do you have a?
Hi, yes. I guess I want to follow up on my water trail question and Trevor's comment. This, first of all, this is a really cool table. I can see that you've done a lot about thinking through like what's available throughout the Delta and the, you know, how people might experience that, how they might come to it. I do see a real sort of major missed opportunity here, though, in the water. I mean, the Delta is a watery place, right? That's one of the things that characterizes it. And if you're talking about adventure, for most people, getting in a boat and going exploring is really more of an adventure than driving around, right? And certainly for, you know, I'm thinking of people from the Bay Area where it's like more than an adventure to get into the Bay. It's like, you know, taking your life in your hands. Whereas going over to the Delta and getting in a canoe or a kayak, where it's going to be more accessible and safer, and you have multiple put-in points. I mean, I don't mean to beat a dead horse here, but I think that to leave that out would be a major oversight.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think part of it, perhaps the reason for its neglect here is that I know we were looking at a water trail as well, but you're very true. It's very true that there's a lot of places that we can visit by boat that we should think about how to join those different sites together. So I appreciate that.
One thing, this is Virginia Gardner again. Linda, thank you. We actually have a very enthusiastic organization that is providing us ground truthing of our proposed water launch sites, and that is the Bay Area Sea Kayakers Group. And Penny Wells.
Right.
And yeah, and
know her. Yeah.
Yes, she's very gung-ho, very enthusiastic, and I think their group is definitely all about, you know, I mean, if they can get out on the bay and go up, they participated, actually she participated in one of our focus groups on the economic sustainability plan too, and one of the comments that we got, not from her group, but from another group for that project, was the difficulty for underserved communities getting onto boats or into boats. And so this is something that we're very interested in doing. There's a rowing group in Stockton that's we're thinking about reaching out to, but there are lots of groups that do work on trying to get either disabled, that's the CAST group with Department of Water Resources that gets disabled kids out learning how to fish. But I think that's a really rich potential area for expansion, and that'll be something that we'll be trying to pursue in the future. So thanks.
And great heritage area partnership opportunities there.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, I have 2 people that have raised their hands. Oh, I guess Linda, did you want to still talk? Do you have anything more, or is...
Oh, I'll lower my hand. Thank you.
Okay. Matt.
Yeah, I'll just be really brief on this same thread that my employer, Little Manila Rising, we're a grantee of the State Coastal Conservancy, and we do explore the coast work, connecting youth from Stockton to, Big Break, hopefully, and out to Point Reyes. And in conversations with them, they actually brought in the SF Bay Trail folks and really wanted to dive into this envisioning process for connecting Bay Trail to a Delta Water Trail. And so I think there's really strong partners there. Glad somebody brought up the Sculling Center. Also want to call out, there's a really great Stockton Sailing Club that's very accessible and, you know, not like a whole lot of yacht clubs that you might find around the world that addresses some of these concerns. So there's rich partners waiting to jump in on this. And I think maybe it's a thematic working group instead of a regional or a geographic working group, since it seems to be something that would pop up in every working group. I think that's my substantive contribution.
Love the idea, Matt.
Yeah, and then I just have to add, because I'm sort of Dexter Downer here, there's lots of times when most of the Delta isn't inhabitable because of water conveyance and water quality conditions, and that's something we all need to be really frank about.
Thank you,
Good
Matt.
point.
Well, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be creating 4 different breakout rooms. One will be North Delta, one will be South and East Delta, one West Delta, and one Carquinez Strait. So you can choose which room you want to go into, and I will be creating that now. This is my first time doing a breakout room, so good luck to me.
We have 31 people back, so I think, yeah. So Virginia, why don't you?
Okay, just quickly, we had a good range of participants between a cyclist and a property owner, winery owner in the Delta, and then just people like, you know, who've had a lot of experience driving in the Delta locally. So it was just an emphasis on the fact that there are existing traffic issues in terms of, we know this, some roads are just already impacted. We need to really be careful about where we direct cyclists and drivers. We want to probably have a working group that would think about how to present driving routes and or adventures that might be done on bicycles as to what kind of road you're on, what kind of bike you have perhaps. And then for the water trail, make sure that people are well informed about safety, you know, boating safety and the different kinds of waterways that you would be on. So things like if you've never been on a boat, you might consider taking a tour instead of trying your own boat. But so then also rules of the road for cyclists, the road bikes tend to want to ride 2 or 3 abreast, and it's really not safe on River Road and other places. Issues about a lot of the bikers having to take routes that are not ideal for bikes, but because they're trying to get to roads that are less often traveled. And then just issues that like Highway 12, where you know, bridges do open for boats and that impacts traffic. So people need to be aware when there needs to be full disclosure about the traffic in the Delta, that you may not be on a quiet country road. You may be in traffic on Highway 12.
Thank you. Does Patrick or Sophia or Nancy, do you want to talk about what happened in your group?
I'll jump in. Oh, go ahead. Patrick, go ahead.
I'll just report real quick. We had good fortune of having Lenora Clark and Carol Jensen in our group, who have a lot of local knowledge. And actually, Blake, I think you've been sent some materials about kind of an actual route that Carol developed that would move the group, move the concept off of Highway 4 and more into getting it out into the actual more scenic destinations. There was a lot of conversation around touching on some of the agricultural stops, the U-pick farm stands, things like that. And also the kind of the Antioch to Pittsburgh shoreline, a lot of the history of the Delta in that area. The Concord, Port Chicago, excuse me, Black Diamond Mines. What am I missing? And Bay Point Shoreline Regional Park. So a lot of kind of other locations to get people away from that main, you know, highway corridor. but there's a lot of resources and materials that have been developed, and that a lot of groups have already thought about this. So sounds like there's plenty of opportunity to kind of build on the list that we started with.
Great. Nancy?
In room 2 in the South and East Delta, there were some great ideas. The Garlic Brothers Marina, the Mickey Grove Zoo, and the San Joaquin Historical Museum, which are both on the same property. Little Manila, although the easiest way at present to visit that may be a virtual tour. And then that can be something that gets developed through partnership later on, being able to get people out there, but that's a little tougher for first-time visitors. The Philippine American Museum and the Mexican American Museum in Stockton were mentioned. The upcoming development of the Japanese Relocation Center as a state historic site at the fairgrounds is a potential future opportunity. And then the Stockton Port, which fits into the World War II theme, and is also a potential hub or a potential place for an adventure hub to be able to get out onto the water and have some experiences from there. The Garlic Brothers Marina is another place where there could be kind of a little node for adventure hubs, as more and more businesses and a service center opportunity is kind of arising there, and maybe kayak rentals or something like that. And then there were a couple of good ideas that were thrown out for some specialized tours, such as a tour of religious sites. And this is not necessarily just our portion of the Delta, but historic churches, the Cambodian temple and the Sikh temple in Stockton. But there are other places across the region which could be really fascinating. And then also tying into that some of those experiences with festivals. For example, there are some religious festivals that are still celebrated. And then same thing with some sort of school tour, with the last standing segregated schools in California being in Walnut Grove, and then also the Chinese and Japanese language schools that are also developing as cultural centers. So there could be some opportunity there. And then finally, for our planning team, you keep hearing us talk about how much we love the bridges. And so a bridges tour, or I added like bridges and ferries, because I also really personally enjoyed the ferry. The arts were being brought into this because of a number of poems, a lot of poetry written about bridges being symbolic between the tension between nature and humanity and in the Delta. And so there you can also bring that arts tie in and expand the experience in that way. So that was our discussion.
Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you.
Sophia,
Yeah, so for
last but not least.
Yeah, of course. The Carquinez Strait, I feel like I also had a bunch of heavy hitters in my group, pretty much all the experts. We, we talked about some themes that could be added, the gold rush, what was it, gold rush theme, and the transitions, the Carquinez Strait as a transition point between the Delta and the Bay, transition, the whole ecology, transition of the transportation elements, and then fishing themes, all the great fishing opportunities, and really how important that is as both an industry and to the history, the cultural history of the area. But really the real overarching theme of our group was these land-water connections, right? And so water trail, again and again, just really the importance of water access, but then how our, whether it's a trail towns, water towns framework, or just really how are you connecting and getting, allowing people on the water. So we had a representative from the city of Hercules who pointed out that Hercules is a great transition between the bay, the water, and the Bay Trail. So it's a great, it kind of pulls both of those together. Benicia, of course, is just, you know, teeming with opportunities for all of these themes. But you have a bunch of other great communities in there with some great opportunities. I'm sure I missed something, but I think I got most of it.
Thank you, Sophia. Is there anything else that anybody wanted to add that was in any of the groups? Okay. Well, if not, one of the things that I will, when I send out sort of a wrap-up email, one of the things that I will be doing is asking people their interest in serving sort of on working groups, working committees, in terms of the you know, in terms of these adventures later on. So look out for more on this, and then I'm really looking forward to sort of developing these further. Anything else that anybody wants to add? Okay. So the next session will begin at 4:15. We're going to get a little bit of a break here. And then the next session will be on interpretation. So looking forward to that, and hope you all can be there for this. Thank you.